It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
This is when you start celebrating that the plan is coming together, you've made it happen,
Yep.
or you're jumping on that bitter train. And what I mean, you're poisoning the well for future generations and telling them how the system's against them, how nobody's got money, you had to be born with it. You are on the bitter train if you're doing that stuff. And there's also a reason in your 40s. When does the midlife crisis kick in?
That's immediately what I thought of.
Typically, the people are trying to figure out, here's the way the midlife crisis happens. You've either done so well that you've lost reality to what you're not connected to who you are, that there's an entitlement that you can do things that you're not supposed to and you forget who you are, or you're on the bitter train and you just can't figure out what's going on in your life and you end up making horrible, desperate decisions that end up blowing up a lot of the good things.
Yep.
So let's talk about this, because I said fork in the road. I don't say that lightly. Positive. If you've done this well, and this is the conversation I've had with my wife, is that if we just do things in a deferred way while we were younger, when we got in our 40s, I would go easier on the savings and we'd start living life a little more.
Because you had built up your army of dollar bills, you wouldn't have to focus so much. You could actually start the process of living like someone else.
So if you are on the positive side, you might become a little more sentimental. Instead of bitter, you're like me where,
Oh, yeah,
I'm
that's
not a
happened.
big crier, but I will tell you, I get goosebump moments all the time.
You're a big
getting
softie, for
excited
sure.
about things. You also get wisdom from all the experience. You've now put in enough time that you can start sharing this. You're thinking of all the things you wish you could have had a beer and told your 25-year-old self. Don't bottle that up. When you're having those shower thoughts, go share those with a younger person so that actually benefits somebody. And then also, you kind of you can reflect. It's that deep breath moment you mentioned where you can take a deep breath and think of how you've respected the time that's required, the investment into your army of dollar bills, and you're starting to get some dividends from it.
But you said the 40s is a fork, so you just described all the positives. I'm assuming then therefore that means there's a negative mindset going into the 40s as well.
So the negative is you have questions about life are just top of the mind. We're talking about, man, I hate my job. I don't know why I'm doing this. And this doesn't even have to be a bad job.
Sure.
I've seen a lot of successful people that are in good paying jobs. It looks like they have everything going for them, but then they're kind of questioning why they're doing it there, because it feels more like a job than a career.
Sure.
Second, they're questioning their marriage. They're questioning what's going on, how do kiddos and life. I thought it would be different. This is what I see. And then you're also seeing, this is the part where I think, like I said, midlife crisis happens because the path to success does start to narrow. When you're in your 20s, when I was talking about not blowing your shot, and the fact that you can there's so many ways, there's hundreds of thousands of roads that will lead to abundance.
Sure.
Unfortunately, the older you get, there is going to be a narrowing down that you better have done the right things, because your opportunities are slimming down. So pay attention and reflect on that. There's a lot of things, because failures are going to be amplified, and it's going to emotionally make you a harder person, I think.
So you're saying in your 40s, you kind of get to choose. Am I going to have that negative, pessimistic mindset that's going to emotionally harm me, or is it going to be this positive thing where I recognize I've done some things right, I'm on the right path, and I'm at the middle of life, but I'm happy about being there?
This hit me, though, because I had the thought a few days ago, but I didn't bring this up in content, because as I was presenting this, I was like, man, somebody in their 40s is going to watch this and go, man, he's really down and out on somebody who might be behind. I am somebody, because in a minute, you guys are going to show me the number I have to invest at 40 or 45 to be a millionaire. What does that look like? And I'm going to tell you guys, it's doable, but here's the other thing I think. If you get here, you're just now finding the Money Guy Show, and say you're 45 years of age and you don't have anything in savings, and you're feeling kind of down and out because maybe you're not going to do it lump sum. You're going to have to do this thing monthly. It doesn't mean life has changed, completely or ended for you. I get excited. I would tell you, focus on the career, because there is nothing wrong if you have to give it 5 extra years. Maybe your retirement's not the traditional 65. Maybe it's 70. You can still let that army of dollar bills create opportunity for you. This is not cause loss. You just need to recalibrate and create opportunity.
So if you are that person in your 40s and you're thinking about, okay, I want to be a millionaire, what are the things I ought to be doing? We got to think about it in context of the financial planning pyramid. And again, sort of the first area is cash flow. Now, Brian, you've always told me something I thought was so interesting. You said in your 40s is really the first time in your life you didn't feel like you were broke.
Yeah, because of the messy middle. I've always been healthy with my financial goals, but because I automated my savings goals, because I've practiced forced scarcity, meaning that every time I got a pay raise, I didn't just let that fall into consumerism. I actually expanded where the money was going so it was going to serve me well in the future. I haven't felt like I had money or felt comfortable where I had breathing room until really the last 3 years.
Sure.
And look, I think on paper, if you saw my tax return, if you saw, all the things, the balance sheet, you'd be like, if that guy doesn't feel comfortable, who does? But
Right.
I'm just telling you, it's on purpose, because I do think if you will do this right, understand what your why is. I had a goal. I was trying to get my army of dollar bills to a point that I could, essentially, I'm not doing financial independence, retire early. I'm doing financial independence so I can unlock to think way outside the
Sure.
box, so I'm not having to do things because I'm paying bills. And that's always been the goal. And I think the other thing I would encourage 40-year-olds, people in their 40s, to think about, I see this with my neighbors, is quit moving the goalposts.
Yep.
Meaning that I think people, as they get big promotions, they think, well, people in my station in life, they should drive this car. People who make this much money, man, they probably live in this
house.
neighborhood.
Yeah.
And that's societal kind of peer pressure that I think that a lot of people put on there blows it up. You gave great advice from a mentor. I'm sad it's not me, because you have other mentors in your life, who said, visualize the house, your dream house. If you're in your 20s, visualize the house you want, your dream house. When you get it, just be happy there.
Be happy. Don't try to do more than that. Just picture that one and go get that goal. But once you have it, hold on to it. Don't feel like you have to advance. And Brian, I want to give you a compliment. I feel like you've done this. I know that you drive a Model 3 Tesla, right? And you love that car. And you still love that car as much today as any other. But you don't have a desire to go buy the Model X right now, or to go buy a Maserati, or to go buy some fancy supercar, because you know you really want the Tesla and you love your Tesla.
Yeah, my 11-year-old daughter, she reminds me of this, because my neighbor, he got a new Model X, and it does the cool doors that open up. It does this Rudolph the Reindeer light show that she loves when he shows it off. And she's like, Dad, when are we getting the Model X? I'm like, honey, we're not doing that. She goes, Daddy, someday, maybe when you get to be rich, we can do that. And I love it, because she doesn't understand. And I love it. If you can be stealth wealth to your kids, that's showing that you're setting the right example. And I do know what makes me happy, and I don't move the goalpost. And then it lets me transition to the last thing I think you ought to focus on cash flow wise. Be generous. There is something about being good with giving money. I've always tried to focus on being charitable, tithing, giving a lot, paying it forward. I think that advanced charitable giving comes into play at this stage.
And we're not just talking about advanced strategies like charitable giving accounts and that sort of thing. It's thinking outside the box in terms of how you do give back. I've heard you say all the time, Brian, that once someone kind of gets in their 40s, not only have they done the 10,000 hour thing, but now they're sort of in leadership roles, whether that be in their community or in their workplace or whatever this. Now might be the time where you want to pour into the lives of younger folks. So maybe your charitable planning, your charitable giving is giving of yourself and your time and your expertise into those you have influence on.
No doubt. So, and also make use of those appreciated securities. If you've got them and you're charitably minded, great planning opportunities there. Risk management. I had a friend, a pastor that, we got to be friends, and he shared with me, hey, when I turned 43, I had a fork in the road moment that if I didn't start running or exercising, I couldn't, my health was going to go a different path. So I always paid attention to that. Just like I said, 40s is a fork in the road. It's not on just wealth creation, and if you're going to be better and celebrate your past successes, it's also, are you giving respect to your health? Because it's not, if you just take it for granted, this is the stage where it will start going downhill.
I think, Brian, I've been hanging out with you since you were in your early 30s. And I will say, I think the most serious you've gotten about your health and your eating habits and your exercise and that sort of thing has been your 40s, right?
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons you said is, but I recognized in my 40s, mortality wasn't just this thought that was way off in the future. It actually became real. It's something that I actually had to stare face to face. And you've made the decision, I am going to let it be a fork in the road, where I'm going to have an enjoyable, pleasant 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s, not neglect that in my 40s and check out early.
Well, I think a lot of 40-year-olds, this is the thing I see. When I find out how old somebody is, I'm like, man, okay. Look, I don't look like an Adonis at the beach anymore, but I do think I still am going to be able to go, if I needed to go hike 15 miles when I'm in my early 50s, I'm going to be able to
gonna be
do
able
it.
to do it,
And
yeah.
those are the decisions I think you have to choose. Where am I fitting into taking my health? I'm not taking it for granted. I'm going to focus on this, and that's such an important thing. I wanted to talk about, but this is also last stop on the train. If you're going about long term, I mean, if you're going to do like life insurance
Oh,
and
yeah,
other
that's a
things,
great
there's
point.
a reason when they do advertisements on TV, they do a healthy 40-year-old. Great time to be looking at life insurance. So if you're in your early 40s, you haven't bought term life insurance for the kiddos, to get them through college and let you build financial independence. This is one of the last easy stops on that while you're healthy. So pay attention to that.
No, I think an interesting thing that happens in the 40s as it relates to investment planning is in the 20s and 30s, we're just focused on accumulate, 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 accumulate. Well, in your 40s, this is the time where you ought to do a spot check. Am I ahead of the curve? Am I behind the curve? Do I not know where the curve is? And figure out, is this the time in life where you really need to start hyper saving to make up for lost ground?
Yeah, and this is a pretty easy exercise. Take your safe withdrawal rate. If you plan on retiring before 55, I would say use like a 3.5% safe
3.5,
withdrawal
yep.
rate. Take what you think you'll need at that age, in annual living expenses, divide it by that number. That's going to give you what you're kind of shooting for. If you're retiring, 60, you could probably use a 4% withdrawal rate to 60 to 65. And if you're waiting until you're, 70, you can get up into the 5s and 6s. So pay attention to that. Do a spot check. I think your future self will thank you. So if you need to accelerate and even save even more of your income.
We said the 30s was a time for you to start thinking about maybe I should have a conversation with a professional tax preparer. Well, something happens in your 40s, now that the gravity of your decisions is pretty substantial, this may be the time in life where you do want to begin the conversation with a professional financial advisor. Reach out to a professional. If you don't know how to spot check yourself well, maybe you should contact an advisor to help you figure out, am I on track, not on track, and what do I need to do to course correct and get on track?
And a lot of people think financial planners are only investments. That is
No,
not.
no.
It's not. The investments are important. Don't get me wrong. Tax location, diversification, those type of things. But it's also making sure you have the retirement plan, making sure the estate plan, tax planning wise. I'm always trying to minimize people's taxes because I feel like it justifies our fee if we're adding that type of value. And then it also, you just don't know what you don't know. So don't let you outsmart yourself as well as keep you away from like dumb doctor deals. And I'll tell you, like this whole election we just went through, can I tell you how many clients I talked off the ledge of doing completely ridiculous things? And I'm not talking about Democrat versus Republican. It doesn't matter. Both sides were concerned in different
equally
ways.
irrational.
I've talked so many people into respecting what they need to be doing from a financial planning perspective versus getting caught up in all the noise that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. And so the psychology or the behavioral stuff is just as powerful as some of the big concepts of actually creating an estate plan or will.
In your 40s is probably that point in time where you're starting to actually build up healthy assets. You're building up healthy income. You've got some good things going on. So from a tax planning perspective, don't screw it up with the IRS.
Yeah.
Don't start getting aggressive or getting greedy or doing things or ignoring things you ought not be ignoring, because they are the folks that can come and take your stuff. And you've worked so hard to build up this stuff. Don't allow yourself to get careless and lose it because you got a little too greedy or a little too careless.
Yeah, I mean, everything's deductible until you get caught. That's an adage that I've shared, and I think, Bo, I've told this story, is that when I did taxes professionally, I have watched grown men cry because they just made bad decisions, and then they continued to not do it well with the IRS. So respectfully, pay legally what you're supposed to, but you might want to consider working with a professional to help you figure out what you legally can also avoid paying too.
Another thing I think is really interesting is that as it relates to tax planning in your 40s, a little bit can go a long way. There are a lot of folks in their 40s I talk to who have never heard this idea of after-tax IRA conversions to Roth. They're like, okay, yeah, that's great, but it's only $6,000. I'm like, yeah, it's only $6,000, but if we do that every single year from now until you get to retirement, you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars of tax-free dollars in retirement. In your 40s, a little bit of tax planning can go a long way to reduce how much you pay in tax in your 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and for the rest of your life.
But also, this is the time where you can Roth versus traditional, or even after tax, so you can do the mega Roth.
Mega Roth, yep.
I mean, those type of things come into play. Remember, we think somewhere between that 25, 30, 35% tax rate, you do want to have a transition from doing Roth, which grows tax-free, to consider looking at traditional, so that when you retire, hopefully at that time you'll have opportunities to do Roth conversions or be in a lower tax bracket. And you can kind of work through that.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about some actual estate planning. This is where your kids are getting older. You might be a little more complex. So pay attention to if you need to go back and see the estate attorney and tweak that estate plan just a touch more.
Yeah, early on in life, you're worried about who's going to take care of your kids. Well, as you get into your 40s and your late 40s, your kids are probably getting close to reaching the age of adulthood. So now you're not so much thinking about, well, who's going to make sure they get fed every night. You're thinking about, man, if my kids come into hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, I don't want to go buy a sports car. So those are the kind of conversations you need to start having as you think about advanced planning with adult or soon-to-be adult-age children.
But what are some numbers for 40-year-olds? Let's get them excited about saving.
So if you are someone who's behind and you still have this desire to be a millionaire by 65 and you're 40, you can save $780 a month. Or if you're a 45-year-old, you have to save about $1,351. It's not impossible. It's just a higher hurdle. But here's what's really exciting. If you're a 40-year-old and all you've done is save $136,000 thus far, and you can earn 8% on average from 40 until 65, you're already on pace to be a millionaire. If you're a 45-year-old and you've got about $224,000 saved and you save nothing else, you're already on your pace, earning about 7.5% per year to be at $1 million by the time you get to 65.
Well, it's even better because I always tell, I want you to think like a financial mutant. I want you to have twice that number. $1 million is not what it once was. So for $2 million, you can see for a 40-year-old, you need to save, if you're starting from zero, you need to save $1,560 a month. For a 45-year-old to have $2 million by the time they're 65 is $2,700 a month. And if you just wanted to have a lump sum, twice as much as what Bo shared. 40-year-olds, it's $272,000 to have $2 million. 45-year-old, $448,000. Here's what I think is incredible. That's only giving you 20 years, but it still shows how powerful your army of dollar bills. You'd only have to have a little under $500,000, and it will do the rest of the work. 75% of it's going to come from your army of dollar bills.
And you've already heard us say that, really, we think a professional advisor makes sense once your assets at a critical level of like $500,000, $500,000. What's so amazing for that 45-year-old is they've been able to get themselves on the trajectory to move towards $2 million. And we think you can do a lot of that just using very simple target retirement funds, very simple index funds without getting too complex.
No doubt.